welcome to Tim's Tiny Arcade. Today we're going to be heading up to Brookfield, Illinois today to meet Doc Mack and go to the Galloping Ghost Arcade, where he's going to be putting on a wiring class for those people who are interested in learning more about wiring cabinets. So let's head to Brookfield.
Arcade board like this. JAMMA was created back in around 1984. The industry, they wanted a way to standardize all the boards so that operators could take existing cabinets and either when a game stopped being profitable or broke beyond repair, that they could put a different game in it and not have to make the expense of buying an entire new cabinet. So JAMMA was developed. Essentially was broken down into a double-sided 20-pin harness. So there's this is considered the component side with all the chips on it, or also the parts side. And then there's the solder side. So the way you can always tell JAMMA apart, aside from counting all the pins, usually there's a tooth or a key that separates the first 7 pins. The first 7 pins are for power, and then the rest of the pins you've got like the service and test switches, the video, the audio, and then the last bunch is for controls. So player 1 is on this side, player 2 is on this side. Power is both here, and there's a printout that you can get. We used to have these at the arcade, we'll get some more, that basically just shows what each pin does. Like, it's a great reference to just have a JAMMA printout on hand, just so you can just what's the up on player 1, and it's pin 18, so you could just count in if this is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So this would be the pin on the JAMMA harness that controls up for your controls. Other older games, this is a Nemesis board from Konami. A few other games use the same pinout. Super rare board, but you can see this one is only a 36-pin connector instead of the 56 like JAMMA. Basically, if you go online and type in whatever the game name is, in this example, Nemesis, and type Nemesis arcade pinout, it will give you essentially something like this that will say component side and solder side, and then it'll list out what each pin does. So this is essentially this is our JAMMA harness, and this is what we're going to be using today. We're going to wire up this board here. Again, there's a bunch of different places that sell JAMMA harnesses. I've seen them as cheap as $7 each, so very inexpensive. And the arcade cabinets, a lot of people are intimidated. It's like this giant thing, there must be so much going on. There's nothing in them. There's one board, and then essentially just these components. It's nothing. It's like cost-wise, it's on the high end $35. So like you could literally get this, you don't even need a full cabinet. You can just wire it up and just have it. They do stuff like the Super Gun systems are essentially the same thing, but years and years ago, back before the arcade was open, like we were wiring stuff up like this and just buying arcade boards and just messing around with it. The Hap JAMMA harnesses are really nice just because a few things. There's a tooth in the 7th pin socket so that you can't put the harness on backwards. Everything's already pre-bundled, so here's all of your power wires. This is your speaker wires. This is for your coin and test switches. This is your video, and then player 2 and player 1. So it takes all the guesswork out of it. This one also uses actual, some harnesses will have tabs that you have to solder onto. This actually uses crimped wire, which are very good. Like, this is, for what you're getting, this is easily the best value and best quality. And, like, you can get them at Hap, or we have them at the arcade, and we get a huge discount at Hap. So if you want to get it from us, like, we'll give it to you for what we pay. So essentially, when we get to it, it will just go right on the board, almost like it's the same thing as like what cartridges like for home consoles used to be. You just line it up, put it on, and then you'd be ready to go. But first we gotta wire everything. So we will start with power going into the cabinet.
Hey, Doctor,
Yes.
if the harness is pinned, it won't let you put it in upside down, right?
If it has a key,
There's a key.
There's most boards that are JAMMA. It will actually say JAMMA on it. There's only one instance, the Sega System 18. The board's set there. I believe it was 18. The hardware that Altered Beast was on said it was JAMMA, but it's not. It has the key in it, or actually it doesn't have the key in it, but it does say it's JAMMA. Essentially, the 12 volt and the 5 volt are switched. So if you put it on, it will short your board off. Not the worst thing in the world to do to fix, but it's something that you don't want to have to do if you don't have to. So there are JAMMA boards that are keyless. You can take the key out of the JAMMA like harness if you wanted to. You just, most of the time you can just put a pin remover. You can just put this in, pull the tooth out, and then use it for pretty much anything.
Yeah. Because it was fun for what it was.
It's a little bit of a slow process. Like, tool-wise, there's not really much you need. You need a pair of wire cutters. I like to use auto wire strippers. There's a few brands out there. I've not found one that works as good as this Tool Aid one. These are about $25. There's a tool shop on Harlem Avenue, right off of Ogden, that you can get these from. And it's just, it takes all the effort out of stripping wires. It works on any gauge wire, super quick. Removes a lot of the time-consuming process. Yeah, it does a great job. For the amount of cabinet, when we opened up, we had 114 arcade cabinets, and only 8 of them turned on. So everything got rewired. And I had the old, there were these red handle wire strippers where you just put the wire in and you pull the wire off. And not fun. After about 5 cabinets, it's like, come on. So once we got these, it was like, we were screaming along. So I was getting about 5 cabinets wired a day, and it was It's fun. The first hunter. It's a blast. So essentially, you got power cord, 3 wires, black, white, green. Everybody has like their own. We've standardized all of our cabinets. So every cabinet that we run at the arcade, whether I wire it or my guy Brandon or Seth or Doug, all the cabinets are wired the same so that when any tech goes into it, there's no weird stuff going on. It's like you can look at it, you can check all your test points. So it's good to come up with like a standard that you like. There's variations. This was an old one that we found on the real Bob Roberts. It essentially just shows how power comes in. It's essentially from here, then you've got your fuse, your power switch, line filter, and then your power supply, and then your transformer. So because we have so many cabinets that we work with, and we always have to be worried, we have to be careful and able to repair machines very quickly. With over 600 games, you never know what's going to go out, and you want it to be you have to be very mobile. Nothing in our place is soldered for the most part. Like, that was one of the big things where a lot of the games that we got, it was all bad solder joints, so we got rid of all the solder, made everything to use what they call quick disconnects, or QDCs. The QDCs basically just go on the wire, and then you got your crimpers. These are Sargent crimpers, same thing. I see people crimp with pliers and all sorts of stuff. These, like, your crimps are only good if they're not coming off. Sargent crimps, you always want to, when you crimp a wire, you always want to double test it, give it a stress test to make sure it's not just going to pull off. You'll see people, it takes a little bit of forearm strength to make sure that it's on there good. We'll do a bad crimp, which you don't want to do. If it's just too light, it'll just pull right off. And that's the worst thing in the world, because you'll be chasing it down and it's extra work. So every wire, give it a little stress test, make sure it's not going to come off. It ends up saving so much time in the long run. So we put QDCs that we use. There's 3 sizes. There's a .110, there's a .187, and then there's a .250. Same thing. You can get these at Fry's. You can get them at Hap. You can order them usually by the 100. If you're going to wire up a cabinet, it's always really good to just have a bunch on hand. So from the black wire of the power in, we've wired it to the start of the fuse block. And then we will basically, you want to think of it as getting to almost like a checkpoint. So the checkpoint we want to get all 3 wires to is this fuse block, or this line filter. The line filter basically just like standardizes, and it makes all the power very stable. I know a lot of people who wire cabinets, they don't use them. We put them on every cabinet just for precaution. Another thing that you'll see a lot of times with, if you're buying a cabinet, you'll see on the power cord, people often remove the ground, just because, like, wherever they were playing it only had a 2-prong outlet. I highly recommend getting just replacement plugs. They have these at Home Depot. Just cut it off. There's 3 wires. There's 3 screws. You just screw the wires in. Very easy, and it will save you. You definitely want to have your power grounded. We had our surge protector was not on. We have a surge protector on our building. It was not running, and the building got zapped, and we had 37 power supplies blow out in one day. So it was just catastrophic. It took 2 full days to get everything back up and running, and it could have just been, a lot of them would have been saved if they had the grounds. For us, just because we don't have a ton of space at the arcade, so when we have to reset machines, so our guys don't have to go all the way behind the cabinets, we include a power switch that we wire into the coin door. This is entirely optional. Some people don't want power switches. They're points of failure, but we put them on. So we're gonna use 0.25 QDC on one side and a 0.187 QDC for the other. We're gonna wire out of the fuse block and go into the power switch. Again, we're only working right now with the black wire. Then we're going to go out of the power switch, which is another 250 QDC. And again, the length of the wire, people are always nervous around wire for some reason when they're learning this stuff. And it's wire. You can cut it as many you screw up on a crimp. You just cut it.
What about the gauge? Is it 12 or 16?
This is a 20 gauge wire. That's good for pretty much everything in your arcade cabinet. Like AC, they usually run like a bigger wire. It's fine. For these cabinets, 20 gauge is fine. I've seen some people use a little smaller. I've seen some people use a little bigger. So it's personal preference, but for us, it's always 20. It's just always never had any issue on any cabinets. So we're going out. Another thing with the wire, always go with stranded. I've seen people that try to go with just solid. Just stranded is 1,000 times better for this application. So out of the switch, we're going into the line filter. So we want to get the 3 wires that come out of here all to go here, and then
line filter do? What is that do?
it basically just stabilizes the power. It keeps it steady so it doesn't fluctuate as much. Like if it won't stop a surge or anything, but if it's the power is fluctuating a little bit, it'll just normalize it out. It just filters out the noise and just keeps it steady. So now we'll do the white wire.
Are you going to upload that?
So we have the fuse in here, so if there's, well, let's put a fuse in. So we put a fuse block in there, we put an actual fuse in there. It's a 3 amp fuse. There's slow blow fuses, and then there's fast acting fuses. This is a fast acting fuse. What happens here is if too much power goes through, you'll flip the switch on, it'll short this out, and that'll protect, the power won't go to your board anymore, which is what you want. If you overload your board with power and it does damage to it, then you got to take the board out and fix it. So always make sure you have a fuse on there just in case. It'll again save your board if there's anything major that happens to it.
What's the usual cause of a fuse blowing? Is there a short?
It can be a short. It could be. We had our it can be almost anything. Sometimes the fuses won't blow. And there's even sometimes where, especially on pinball, like there's solenoids that fire to move things, and like our baby Pac-Man, it keeps burning out. It doesn't trip the fuse, so we're gonna step down and the solenoid burns up, and then we have to replace this whole coil. So it's better if we drop the fuse down to protect the components that are past the fuse. So we had our Galaxy Force machine, for example. It has fuses all over it, but a wire broke before the fuse because the machine moves, and it just hooked one of the wires as it was turning, cut it, and the power stayed live. And the wire spun, arced, hit the side of the machine, and caused catastrophic damage. It just blew out the motor board, the I/O board, the motor board and the I/O board. And now we have to completely rewire that cabinet, which is, you're talking at least 30 hours of two people wiring, just because it's an outrageous cabinet. There's so many panels you have to take off. It's definitely a two-person job, and it's just a mess. So, and there's so many lights and everything. So, I've seen people. It's like people will replace a fuse with just anything, just so it can never trip. They'll just put foil in it or put a nail in it. It's like it's there to protect your boards. Like some of your boards, like this board right here, it's a $1,200 board. This board right here, this is the only board of it is known to exist. Like nobody has that game. So it's one of those that it's such a simple precaution to take to preserve your hardware, because if pretty much anything can be fixed on a board, but there's always custom components on some of the obscure stuff. Like Capcom has, or Konami has, these sound chips are custom. So it's like if those go out, this custom pack goes out, you're gonna have a very difficult time fixing stuff like that. Same thing with Namco. Anything that's a custom chip is, if it goes out due to electricity hitting it, you have a problem, and it can be very difficult to fix. So we put a QDC on the white wire that can go directly into the line filter. Oh, and there you go, stress test. Oh, I didn't actually crimp this one. You can twist the wire to make it go in a little bit better. If you strip too much wire, you can always cut some off. Same thing with anything. There's the QDCs. There's a ton of places in China that make them. There's certain manufacturers that I personally don't like the quality of their QDCs. So when I'm ordering from HAP, there's certain vendors that I won't let them send us their components. So any place that you're buying components from like that, if you don't like the quality, ask if there's another vendor, and you can get a better, something different. Last wire that we've got to hook up is the ground wire. This is the earth ground. Again, we're going to need another 0.250 QDC. I'm going to take another wire and daisy chain it to this wire because I want to have on our power supply, which will power up next, it's got a spot for a ground, which you can ground it to here, but unless this is grounded, then it is susceptible to getting it can fry out if there's a surge or anything. When I crimp, I usually do one in the center, and then one in the front, and then one in the back. Stress test. And put that on there. So now we have a floating ground, and this is essentially just running straight through. So the black wire goes right through, the white wire goes right through. There's 3 things in the arcade cabinet that have to get powered. There's got to be a power supply. This feeds power to the board. Then there's the transformer, which runs to the monitor, and then there's a marquee light. So you have to have 3 wires coming off of each one of these to go to those various sources. I'm going to do these relatively short because this isn't going into a cabinet. This is just for demonstration. So can cut 2 wires that are the same length. Depending on, like, if your cabinet layout on the bottom, if you want your transformer to be further away, you make your transformer wires slightly longer. And then your marquee light, usually, because it has to go all the way up to the top of the cabinet, you make that the longest. And we're going to bundle 3 wires in a QDC. Two sets. Just twist it. Okay. So now, again, we'll strip these sides. We'll run, one side is going to go to this transformer. Transformer has two going in, 2 going out. These are 187 QDC terminals.
Are those different sizes for different monitors, or?
The transformers are standard. Any monitor, excluding XY monitors and black and white monitors, any arcade monitor that's a raster monitor like this one can use a transformer like this. With the, let's see, I think Sanyo monitors, not even Sanyo monitors use this one. It's you always want to run a transformer. There's literally like one monitor type in the later like it's in like golden tea cabinets. You don't absolutely have to have a transformer on it. It's usually better to just run one. They're inexpensive. I think these are $15, $20 on the high side. So it often, if you don't run a transformer, you turn it on, you're just running AC straight in, you're going to blow up your monitor. Some monitors have the transformer on them, but it's even if it has one, if you're not sure, just run it. So we did one side going to the transformer. The other, we're going to put on a horseshoe QDC, which is basically just a terminal that will go into the power supply. Same thing. One crimp in the center, front crimp, and a back crimp. And then this side is set up. That in there. And then for the power supply, you've got the bottom three are 2 for AC and 1 for the ground. So we will go into the AC. And then we'll do the same thing with this other bundle of wires that we made up.
You can go on either side of the transformer on the bottom.
Yeah, I normally, yeah, you can go on either side in the bottom. I make a standard for everything. So when looking at it, I always have the black wire run always on the right side of all the wire. For me, it's better to just have a bunch of rules that it just takes a lot of the thinking out of it. It's just like it becomes so automated. You can just tear through them, and it's never anything anybody thinks about.
Those like have positive or negative, you can just go either way.
Yeah, it's because it's AC. It's alternating. So it's stress test these. Put that on the white side of the power, and then into the bottom of the transformer. Then we had made this other off of the ground. We had ran this wire. We'll put a horseshoe on that. And put that into the ground on the power supply. So now from here, this will turn on, and we can test voltages and everything, but before we do that, let's get this monitor wired real quick as well. So because the monitor's over there, we're going to run slightly longer wires than we would normally. These are 1/8/7s. You can use a larger QDC. I would not recommend it. Like you want to use the proper size pin or QDC unless you absolutely have no other option. Like they'll fit on there, but it's not something that you want to do as your standard practice. All right. So this monitor, looking at it, it has male Molex pins on it. So we will put female Molex pins on this side. Pass these around. These are Molex pins. You can see the difference between the male one and the female one. So we will, Molex pins, a little more difficult to pin versus QDCs, but once you do a handful of them, they're not difficult at all. So again, using the Sargent crimpers, there's a channel that the wire just lays inside. Then you have to use, on Sargent crimpers, it's the E tooth. Will fold the two legs around. You want to make sure that when the legs are lying in the channel, they sit like this, and then when the top of the crimper comes down, it curls them in, and you can see on that it's got like a very nice even look to it. And same thing, I see people do this where they just sandwich them together, and then you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that it's a clean crimp. Same thing, stress test. Then they have the Molex housings. So we will make sure that.
Where do you find those out in the same store?
Pretty much everything you can have. They have some of the stuff. Most of it they do have at Fry's. Maybe I don't think like places like Micro Center carry it. It's a little bit too specialized for them. Same thing. Like if you're by us and you need some pins, just hit us up. Like we're happy to help out if you need a handful of them.
And you know what? I think that's something that scares a lot of people when they see that connection. They're like, oh my God, it's a connection. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
You know, I don't have where to plug it in. When it's just a cable with that connection to plug it into, you know?
For sure.
Right?
The Molex stuff is, there's stuff that we get from Japan, and they'll be like, I have no idea where I would get that.
Yeah.
And it's a nice thing, it's all just wire. So
Right.
if there's some weird connector on it, you can just lop it off and put any connector that you're comfortable with.
Right.
You'll see, again, like Molex makes a ton of different connectors. Like this is a 9-pin connector.
Yeah.
So the same pins go in here as in the 2-pin connector. So if there's like, again, because we want to standardize things and make it hot swappable, like we'll take connectors off if we know we're going to have to be working on a control panel.
Yeah.
And we'll put something that it's like, okay,
More
well,
generic.
it's just like everybody's going to be familiar with this.
Right.
We standardize like our joysticks and stuff. It's always up, down, left, right, button 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the last pin is the ground. So anything that we put in there, if we're trying to test a stick, we can do it on whatever cabinet we want to if it has one of those connectors on it.
Right.
but yeah, like once you've got an idea of what's out there, all the mystery comes out of this, and it's just like you can fine tune it to be exactly how you're comfortable doing it. And then once you do it 3 or 4 times, you'll be doing these in your sleep. Like there was, again, we were doing these just non-stop, just JAMMA cabinets. It's like I got to make another wiring setup like this, and you don't even think about it. It's just stripping wires, putting crimps on, and it becomes something you just don't think about. Like it's just the repetition of doing it.
Right.
So you could, there's a tooth on that. If you could plug that in for me, please. Those are actually keyed as well, so you can't really put them on the wrong way. So now we could plug this in. This will power up. That'll turn on, but we have nothing that we can see yet because we've got to connect the JAMMA harness.
The color code is like white is always power and black is brown, or
With any color codes, like you never know. Like
in this case, the monitor has got black and white, so that means white.
yeah, like they have the power. Like the white is the hot and the or black and the you'll get wires on old cabinets that have no color coding. That you can run it back to see which on the AC plug, like one is slightly larger. You can check all that. It really doesn't matter. So, with JAMMA harness stuff, there's cabinets that like usually red is 5 volt. Unless you're 100% sure, you always want to hit it with a multimeter just to make sure. Just because you never know. I've seen the craziest things done on arcade cabinets and conversion cabinets, and it's one of those where I've seen some beautifully wired cabinets, and I've just seen some stuff that's like, this is a fire hazard. Like, how is this not catching on fire? Like, it's yeah. So it's just a good thing to always be cautious on it. It's better to double check than blow something out. But in this case, we know because it's a brand new JAMMA harness, and the reds are going to be 5 volt. So we can literally bundle all 4 red wires together because the power supply only has one spot for 5 volt. Even though the 5 wires are going to 4 different pins on the JAMMA harness, the wires can end up at the power supply all at the same spot. Again, stress test it. The pink is -5, the blue is 12 volt, and the black is the ground. Same thing, like a lot of people think, oh, it's 56 wires, it's like, how am I going to memorize 56 wires and get these color codes down? And in all honesty, like, this is already 14 wires are going to be done right here. So it seems like a bigger number, but when you find out that they're all going to the same place, it takes a lot out of it. It makes it a lot less worrisome. So there's 6 ground wires. the ground is continuous through the entire cabinet, through the board. And we'll get to that in a little bit, but I usually split the 6 ground wires into 2 bundles because the ground on the power supply, there's two spots for it, so as not to overfill the QDC. This gives it a little bit more room and it's balanced. So 5 volt. There are other power supplies that have the order differently. It's like the setup order is different. So just make sure you're always putting the right one where it needs to go. Black in the ground. You just want to tighten these, not too tight, but not so they'll fall out. And the pink is -5. Okay. So the power is now done for the cabinet, and we can test it and turn it on. Literally, the only thing that we really need to do left is the video, and then we can see if this is going to turn on and work and everything.
Is there any risk of electric shock, like, you know, when it's powered? I mean, touching anything that's there?
You don't want to touch the same, like if you're, like you can touch this, but don't touch this and this.
Oh,
Like, it's, like you don't ever want to, it's best if you're going to be messing with the power, shut it off. Except if you need it on to test voltages and stuff. Like if you take the leads from your multimeter, you test them, turn it on, you stick them on there, you're not going to get shocked.
right.
Like if you're flat out touching the metal, like it's the common sense of electricity. So like just be careful. You always want to make sure that there's not metal touching other metal anywhere, because that'll be what causes things to not work.
Well, they probably make a plastic sleeve for those, right? A sleeve that can go over those connectors.
I'm sure it's out there. I've not seen one, but on older power supplies I have. But for these, there's never any. As long as you're aware of where it is, especially with arcades, more people are concerned about the monitors. Especially the anode and the flyback, like those are the big problem areas on arcades. Like I've seen people who have fixed monitors for 20 years, they've got zapped, and I knew one guy that was blind for days. I got shocked once. It lit the whole cabinet on fire, and that's 3/4 inch MDF, which doesn't just catch on fire easily. I got lifted and thrown into the wall. So you want to be careful around the stuff. The worst being the anode and the flyback. Like, and you can touch them. You'd want to discharge them. Monitor work in general. There's a 2-hour class I can go on how to do monitor stuff, which we hope to do that soon, and more videos on that. But those are the big caution areas. Just be careful around the anode and the monitor. Let's see. So we will do the video, and then we'll fire this up and see if it works.
That looks like JAMMA.
So So again, the JAMMA harness,
That one you just like.
the video is 5 wires. We've got red, green, blue, ground. There's a ground, and then there's the sync.
Did you end up selling what is it, real Samson already? Oh,
Are there a lot of monitors on the market, or are they burning out and just going in the garbage?
Most monitors can be fixed repeatedly. Usually when they're starting to look bad, they need a cap kit. Cap kits you can get from Bob Roberts. There's a bunch of places online. We actually have a kit that we're going to be putting out for the K7000 monitor pretty soon. But most of the time the monitors, you do a cap kit or it'll need a new flyback. There's some monitors like the Nanos that come in from Japan. There's no replacement flyback for them. So those monitors go out and then I don't even know what to do with them. It's just kind of like, they're definitely difficult to fix. There was an article that was put out not too long ago about how nobody's going to be able to have monitors soon, and like we're always in need of monitors, but there's a ton of them out there. We literally just picked up 60 monitors last week in a warehouse and paid, it was I think $800 for 60 monitors and a bowling game and a bunch of racer seats. So the monitors ended up being like next to nothing, and they're out there. Like anything in the arcade scene, it's like if you're looking for it and you start talking to people, you're gonna find it. You might not always like the price, but it's all out there. So these are monitor Molex pins. Same thing with the power Molex pins. There's 2 wings that you have to fold over. Exact same way that the power pin work. The wire just lays in a channel. Monitor stuff, like there's people that will cap a monitor. They usually will charge about $80 from what I've seen. If you learn to do it yourself, essentially you can find a place that'll sell pre-assembled cap kits that'll have all the proper values bundled together based on which monitor you have. And they're usually like $15 to $20. So huge savings if you do it yourself. It's a little intimidating the first few times you cap a monitor, but definitely the worst thing that I've seen people call in repair techs to fix stuff. There was a guy I knew. It was just the marquee light. It's 2 wires. And we weren't going to go out there for 2 wires. Usually we like to do our house calls. If we can, we'll do them for nothing, because how cool is it people have arcade cabinets in their house. But he called this other guy, and his hours are $120 for the visit, and then $80 an hour. So it's like to do 2 wires, which we were sending him videos of like, here, it's this wire and this wire. It's a white wire and a black wire. Just cut them, get a $5 ballast from Home Depot, and do this himself. And it ended up costing a ridiculous amount of money. And it's unfortunate. It's one of those things where it's so worth learning how to do it. and most of this stuff is so easy that once you get it going, you'll never pay somebody to fix stuff for you again. So this is a 10-pin Molex video connector. It goes RGB, so this is determined by the actual monitor. And they don't usually have pin listings on them, but again, they're pretty standard. Occasionally you'll get a little variance in one of them, but it's so infrequent. So it's red, green, blue, ground are the first 4 pins, and then the 10th pin is the sync pin. So then we can
So that order is standard for most monitors?
yeah. There's like Atari, the monitors that Atari uses, they have 5 pins in a row that you use. Some monitors require 2 syncs. Some boards require 2 syncs, but for the most part, this is the pretty standard layout with our red, green, blue, ground, and then the 1 sync wire. Sometimes you have to double sync you can make a split in this wire and put it to both pin 9 and 10, but
almost every monitor I've looked up online, you can find a diagram for it that'll tell you, there's like a wiki or a couple wikis out there that are really good for that stuff.
for sure.
You might see the term composite sync and component sync.
Yes.
And composite is where it's 2 syncs, or
Component is
stumping down.
yeah. Give you a ghost coin for that. Let's see.
The reason I'm asking is because I brought up the Galaxian to you, and I'm having trouble getting the sync down because even though my wire colors are a little bit different, and I'm trying to figure out if it's composite sync, component sync.
That one, normally if it's not, does your monitor have the double boards?
No,
No? What monitor is it?
it's I think it's Geo7.
Okay.
I think. Well, anyways, I'm not trying to go ahead.
You should bring it in.
I'm just talking about. I see that term a lot: component sync, composite sync.
Yeah. Well, if the easiest thing to do is split the last wire and put it into pin 9 and 10. And if that doesn't fit, well, or switch it to the 5th pin in, or 6th pin in.
You won't damage it if you're trying to find sinks.
Right.
And
It's most of the stuff. The only way you can damage anything on one of these monitors is if you're like from a wiring standpoint, you won't. Like it's just signals, and either they work or they don't. The only monitor that something wrong on the board can damage the monitor, or vice versa, is with XY. We've seen it a ton of times where the board will fail and it'll knock out the monitor, and it just does catastrophic damage.
the actual guns in the tube and everything.
Well, it doesn't hit the guns of the tube. It just hits the transistor on it. That it's like you'll have to replace those. So let's see here. So again, make sure that all the metal is clear. Let me find a power cord real quick.
Behind you.
Yeah. Like,
All right.
excuse me.
Actually, this is actually working.
So we can do what they call a smoke test, where There's nothing in the harness. So that's all on. So the monitor, we heard it crackle. That means that turned on. Power supply has a light on it. Nothing's catching on fire. Nothing's smoking. So now we can take our multimeter, and what we want to do is make sure that in shipping this knob hasn't gotten turned. In all the power supplies that I've ever used, I've never gotten one that has had a voltage turned up. Majority of the time I always test them just to make sure, because again, with the rarity of the boards that we get to work with, the dumbest thing in the world would be if this is cranked up to 8 and we just burn the board up. So you get your 2 leads, and essentially you just put one black on the ground, and it's at 5.11, which is perfect. You can check the other ones. Usually there'll be a little bit of variance in, like 4.29 for the -5 and 12.5 for the 12, all good. Don't want to run it too much more than like 5.1, 5.2. Some boards are super particular where they want to be, like midway boards like being at 5.1. If you have them at 5.0, sometimes they'll act a little glitchy. Same thing with Gottlieb stuff, Cubert, Mad Planets. Those like to be right at 5. They don't like too much over. So we will shut this off. Power went out, monitor went out. And now we will plug this board in.
How'd you get that? Where'd you come across it?
Is that Hoppy Mappy?
This is Hopping Mappy. So this was actually a project that I did where the ROMs were dumped to MAME, and this board was actually originally a Rolling Thunder board. It had basically, since the boards are the exact same, we're able to rewrite all the ROMs and convert this board to be Hopping Mappy. There's literally, I've been burning ROMs for a long, long time. It's the best thing with MAME is if, and what MAME was originally supposed to be. MAME was never supposed to be about the average person playing games on their home. It was about the preservation of the boards and the hardware and the software. It's such an asset to be able to, if a ROM fails, just to be able to rewrite it. Like you get a chip, you get a good ROM burner, and rewrite the chip. These chips are, these 4 chips, they're very difficult to get, and we had to upgrade my burner that I was using. I think I spent, it's like a $500 chip burner, and I had to upgrade. I think the burner that I'm running now was like $800 because there's so few things that actually write these chips. So, but it allowed us to actually have an actual hopping mappy on original hardware. So we can fire it up. We don't have any sound hooked up, but there it is, hopping mappy. Upside down.
Upside down.
So now with that,
Wow, looks great.
there's sometimes you can fix that in the dip switches. The dip switches are these banks of switches here. They'll control everything from the coinage, the number of lives you get, your time, like in the game, and often screen flip. If it's not on in the dip switches,
Is the monitor sitting upside down?
no, this
that's
would be
why it's
sitting
so-
properly. Essentially, there are 4 wires. It's in this harness here. Let's see if I can.
The color on that monitor is amazing.
Yeah, this is. I picked up a bunch of 13-inch monitors for. We have a second Darius cabinet, and we're building it up. So we bought all these 13-inch monitors. So we'll eventually get that all rebuilt and looking nice.
How's it get so dusty inside, or was it sitting in a warehouse out of the cabinet?
Both.
Okay.
They get dusty in the cabinets.
In the cabinets?
Yeah. Let's see. So that is. So there are 2 plugs in here now. Essentially, if we flip them, it will be playing upright. Again, you want to be careful. So we'll flip red and blue.
Which release was this one for?
And just for precaution, if you felt it was needed to discharge a monitor, it's basically a matter of lifting up that little rubber flap, right, and kind of like.
Yeah, you essentially you want to ground yourself to the monitor, the metal part.
Yeah.
Early on, I had a guy who came in. This is one of those things that made me super uneasy about working with other techs. We're standing there. I'm running around, and this guy's like, "Yeah, me and my friend, we're techs. We do all this all the time." And it's he starts working on a monitor, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna discharge this." And he grounded himself. He put on a static band, and it's like, "Oh, I don't even static band myself to stuff, but okay, that's cool." But then he clipped himself to the wood.
The wood.
Yeah. Okay. Which will do nothing.
Right.
Like if
Yeah,
you
that's
discharge that, you're gonna get blasted.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm gonna discharge this monitor. I'm like, you're gonna kill yourself is what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. I'm like, you guys gotta go. I'm like, I'll do all this myself. It's all right.
Wow.
But people don't know. They get what they learn. They just don't know sometimes. If you're going to be doing this stuff, always have a flashlight with you.
Is it true if you can damage the monitor if you put the vertical and the horizontal and vice versa? Or?
Yeah, you can.
So what you're doing is just switching the position, right? But not putting them.
Not swapping.
Yeah.
Like it's. And this one is actually nice because it's even labeled. And I've got the. I'm terrible with remembering where things go sometimes, which is usually why I always take pictures.
Yeah, because there is some monitors that got a different connector right in the bottom that you switch it off in the bottom and it will turn the orientation, right?
Yeah, there are there's some monitors that are definitely set up better than others. Let's see here.
Y ese güey es de escenas, güey. Es como una pinche película, güey. Va saliendo el güey, y ya lo va matando, güey. Es una película, güey.
There we go. Let's try that. And there we go. So essentially, to do a monitor flip, there's some that will flip easy. There's some that you actually have to cut the harness in half. This one was a nice one to work with, and the fact that it had it labeled was really cool too. So, but again, little stuff like this, just cards that you have that can clarify stuff. Even if you do it, like I've done that a million times, I never like doing it just because it's a small, tight place to work on, and it's just easier to always have it written down to where you can just glance at it, regardless of if it's your first time doing it or your 100th time doing it. So that's pretty much it. The only thing left would be doing the sound, which unfortunately I don't have a spare speaker, and the control panel. Control panel, super easy. Essentially, when you're doing a control panel, most buttons are either leaf switch or micro switch. This is a micro switch. This is a Cherry D44X micro switch, which are my personal favorites. A bunch of companies make them. Zippy is one company. There's a company called eSwitch that makes them. And to me, I just never like the quality of those. Like the Cherry switches, just the 44 stands for, it determines the weight that it's the weight of the press of the switch, and you can hear in the switches. If you listen to cheap switches, they have a more hollow sound.
Is there if I feel the like the tension on that? Because I picked up some cherries that were really low, like 15 gram or something like that. Because I was thinking, it was my first time getting any, and I was thinking I wanted something that would be really easy, but it was actually too soft.
Oh yeah.
But this feels good. This feels a lot better.
That is what every game in the 90s was wrong. Like every Mortal Kombat machine, most of the Street Fighter machines. They're just a great switch.
You said these are 45 gram?
44.
44?
D44X. You can get these from Paradise Arcade. They're out in Minnesota. They're the only place that I know that you can just order these from. Hap for a long time switched to eSwitch, which when we were opening, we're doing all these cabinets up, and I wasn't getting to play too much of them, and like 2 days before the opening day, I was doing a lot of play testing. And like my Street Fighter felt like garbage, and my Mortal Kombat felt like garbage. Like, what is going on here? And all my fighting games, like I don't miss my down to forward or anything, but I was not hitting them. And I'm like, it must be these switches, which you often hear, and it's usually never the case, but this was the case. The e-switches were just the top to them. It just, your diagonals don't read right on them. So we basically re-micro switched every button on every one of our fighting games before we opened. Within 2 days, and it was like we probably had 45 fighting games. So times 2-player times 6 button and 4 for the sticks.
No,
so
I appreciate that you guys do that though, because it does make a huge difference.
It does. It's like you can go like e-switches are slightly cheaper, but if you're not having fun playing this stuff, what's the point of doing anything? So
yeah, like those like 15 gram or whatever micro switches that I picked up. I mean,
thank you.
They just feel like mush, when I was trying to work with them.
There's a lot of options out there. Like some people love Sanwa stuff. Those are so sensitive to me. Like I like them, but I like these.
I'll have to give those a shot. I'm using Sanwas right now.
Yeah.
And they work, but I'll have to try those.
Yeah, they're like I said, I I don't allow E-switch on our floor anymore, except for our start buttons. Like, we've got a million E-switches, and for a test switch, sure,
Right.
but an actual button that somebody's once they're mid kick, yeah, it's gotta be these. So essentially, for the control panel, it's however many buttons it is. So you got your stick, up, down, left, right. So there's 4 action wires, and then however many action buttons you have, button 1, button 2, button 3. You need to make a ground, which they give you 1 wire in the JAMMA loom, and you just basically keep daisy chaining the wire. Just cut it. Twist them both together. And put on another QDC. And you basically just keep doing that, and then do 1 QDC on the action button, and then on the micro switch, the ground is the top, and then you just put the action wire here, and then you'd have your buttons, and then you're done. Like the sound, there's 2 wires, again, separated for speakers, a white wire and a black wire. They just go to the only 2 spots, and if there's a test switch, you can wire to that, but most everything else is, if you're this far, you've got it. Like, your game's turning on.
That's cool.
I hope you enjoyed the video today, and thanks for watching. You can always like or subscribe. Until next time, peace out.